For our lesson today, what we're going to do is look at four things, and I say four things because it's already almost 20 minutes still. Sorry, Bible class running as long as it did. I can cut this a little bit short. We're going to hit the important points on it, but most of it's stuff we've talked about in probably the last 6 months at different times. So for those of you who've been here, you're going to catch it, but we're going to talk about some things, what God sees and what it means. You know, we got to say that sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. And how true that is. I see it in everyday life. I see it with people that I have to deal with. Sometimes I see it in myself, and then I get that. I had a lady the other day. This was on Friday. Come back, and the guy that's working with me, what are you both doing here today? One of you supposed to be here on Saturday, and one of you supposed to be here on Monday. What are you both doing here today? What do you mean? One of you supposed to be here on Saturday, one of you supposed to be here on Monday. What are you both doing here today? And then, oh my, this is Friday, isn't it? Yeah, that kind of explains it all, doesn't it? But, yeah. We knew where we were and where we were. She didn't even know what day it was, and she's trying to really get on us about our work habits or where we were. So, you know, things like that can happen when we read the Bible and when we study the Bible, and even when we don't read the Bible, when we don't study the Bible, when we just listen to what people say about the Bible, and we pick it up, we take their advice, we take what they say, we don't really look at it. We think we see what God sees, but really what we're thinking is, well, God must surely see what I see. You know, I see it, you know, it's plain to me, so that must be what God intended and what God wanted. But there are things that Jesus considered obvious that other people, that they just didn't see it. They didn't pick it out. They didn't, you know, it was obvious to Jesus, and he pointed it out to them and said, look at this. Look at this. Do you understand it? And it was something that would help them in life, but surely would help them in their walk of life headed for salvation. So if we'll look at things through the eyes of Jesus, you know what that's going to do? It's going to help sharpen our spiritual perceptions and help us to develop a healthy eye in the world of spiritual values. So we're going to consider quickly 4 cases where Jesus saw things others might altogether miss. And like I tell you, there's some things that we looked at recently that's I didn't really catch first time. We talked about the centurion, right? The centurion who had a servant who was sick. Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 12. We won't read it. That'll help us cut some time. You can go along through there and look at it, and maybe even write down the passage and read it later if you got time at home, whatever. But this centurion had a servant who's sick, and he sends people to Jesus, and whether he goes where he sends, whether he sends people is both the same thing in the Oriental mind, because there are 2 different gospel accounts that kind of gives it 2 different ways. But anyway, it's the concept that this guy has about authority. Authority, okay? And he says, you know, Lord, you speak the word, my servant will be healed. But there's some things we want to notice about that. There are many people in positions of authority who do not understand authority. We call them Congress. Okay? political leaders are especially like that. They don't understand authority. Our founding fathers, most of them understood it. Okay? But most of the people up there today simply don't understand it. They strut around like peacocks showing everyone how pretty they are. A dear friend of mine talked about, some people that he knew that they could strut while they were sitting down. So typically people do not appreciate people like that. And people like that will eventually fail you because they're not leaders. They don't know how to act. They act authoritatively, but they really don't know how to act with authority. They don't know how to get things done properly. They're not going to help you in this world get things done in an orderly way, in a productive way. And surely, if you're talking about spiritual values, they're not going to help you get to heaven. So the centurion's understanding of authority was evidenced in the way that he addressed Jesus. Now, remember, the centurion is a Roman. He's a soldier. He's kind of like an officer. He's over 100 men. And Jesus is a Jew. That enough is, buddy, Jew, you do what I tell you to do, that's it. But he calls him Lord, he calls him Sir. He's very humble toward him because he understands authority, not just authority with people, but he understands kind of a religious authority. He understands about Jesus being a special person. He did not demand to be considered on the same level. He didn't demand to be above Jesus. Jesus, you come and do this. Jesus, I demand that you do this. He's asking Jesus, I've got this servant who's sick. I want you to come. He's died. Lord, my servant is lying home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus says, I'll come and heal him. You don't need to do that. And it comes down to, you just speak the word. I'm a man of authority. I don't have to wear a badge if I've got a right relationship, a good relationship with people that says, boss. There are some people that do, and they like it, and that's their mark. You better do what I say. But I appreciate bosses, even managers, leaders who appreciate people under them, the ones who help, the ones who get things done. So here's a man. He's evidencing this concept, this proper concept of authority. Humility is seen in his stating his unworthiness to have Jesus come into his house. Why? Why would it be unworthy? Because Jesus would be unclean as a Jew if he entered into his house. See, understood about the Jews, their customs. Are we like that with some people? They have certain things that they believe. Are we willing to let them have their beliefs? Now, it's all right to talk to them about it. It's all right to, have conversations and say, well, we don't believe that because of this and this and this. But do we try to force people out of their belief systems? His concern was for another person, not himself. It wasn't about him. It was about his sick servant. So faith is a necessary quality to truly understand authority. Without faith, we cannot truly understand authority. It's not going to happen. Absent the true biblical faith, men will use their authority in worldly ways. Now, think about Herod, King Herod, who tried to kill, or did kill all the babies, trying to kill baby Jesus. Think about Pilate, who eventually had Jesus crucified. Did they understand authority? What was Pilate's famous phrase? What is truth? What does it matter? I'm dead if I do, I'm dead if I don't. See, I cleaned that up real well. Dead if I do, dead if I don't. And he made the wrong decision either way. He could have done the right way for eternity, but he didn't. Matthew 20:25 through 28 talks about, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. Jesus talking to his disciples. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. Whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So this man did not have to appear authoritative to be a man of authority. And understanding it. And that's what faith brought to him. And that's what Jesus saw that most people didn't see. Now, we have a case of an afflicted woman here. This is from Mark chapter 25, verse 34. We've talked about this recently. And typically, people who are afflicted detest power. Detest power. Why? Because power typically afflicts. But in the case of this, I got an A and afflicted woman. I guess I didn't get that out there. But she appreciated power. She appreciated the power that Jesus had. But most people don't appreciate power. What's the old saying? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And we see that in politics, we see that in the world. Liberation theology, have you heard that term before? Liberation theology? That's happened around the world. That was big back in the 60s and 70s, and it's making a big return now here in the United States of America. It targets power as being sinful. So you have to go after the big guys. You got to bring down the man, whoever the man is. And so you get these people like Anonymous and some of these other groups that are out there, and they don't even realize what they're backing and what they're saying. They're just out there, but it's, we got to go after the powerful. We got to bring the powerful down. That'll make things better. You can talk to Lance here, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to go out on a limb here. He could probably tell you the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. The American Revolution was based on an intellectual movement, understanding that you needed people who understood how to rule people, and to do it, through a constitution. The French Revolution was based on let's kill all these people. Let's kill all the people that know how to run a nation, and ended up with nobody knew how to run a nation, so they got a dictator. That's what liberation theology kind of does for you. So this woman approached the powerful Jesus with humility. See, verse 28 there. She didn't want to be a bother. How many people in the world want to be a bother? How many people in the world make it a point to be a bother to other people? So reverence is seen in their fear and trembling. In verse 33, we see an uneasiness over a purely personal concern, but her faith was the key to her, and here's the primary word, her actions. Faith was the key to her actions. So Matthew 7 and 8, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you, for everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, to the one who knocks, it will be open. So yeah, there was the faith, as the starting point, but it brought something else on. It brought an action on to get something completed. And that's what Jesus was pointing out, this action. We'll see that even more here in the case of the Canaanite woman in Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. She was a woman who refused the way of foolish pride. Okay? Now, why is that unusual? Because the Canaanites were a very selfish people, a prideful people. They were so proud that they had kicked God to themselves to worship. In fact, if you go to Romans chapter 1, that second half that talks about they didn't want knowing God, they didn't want to keep God in their knowledge, so they went out and created all kinds of images. Guess who's talking about? Primarily the Canaanites. That's why God judged them all those many years ago and gave that area to the Israelites. Okay? And let me just say this, it doesn't mean anything today. That doesn't mean anything today. Those preachers on the radio and on the TV who talk about today, it doesn't mean anything today. It meant something back then. But see, they were very prideful, they were very selfish. They created their own gods. But there's still a lot of people, even though it doesn't mean anything in the land today, there's still a lot of descendants of those type of people today who don't want the God of the Bible, they want to create their own gods. So this woman approached Jesus with reverence. She addressed him as Lord, Son of David, and bowed before him. That's in verses 22 and verse 25. Or verse 22 and verse 25. She refused to be insulted by lesser, merely selfish concerns. I'm only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, but I'm here right now, so how about helping me too? You know, I've got this daughter that's sick. She needs help. Okay, and she did not revile, but gave a humble answer to Jesus' challenge there. And when Jesus, talked about it's wrong to take the children's bread and give it to the dogs, she came up with a pretty good answer, didn't they? Even the little doggies give the crumbs. But she was very humble. So she refused to go the way of selfish pride. She didn't run Jesus down for all these things that he was saying. And he looked at that, he saw something very special within this woman. So her faith helped her overcome the pride that could have ruined her hope. Number 4, the case of a widow who gave all that she had. And we all know that about the widow's mite, right? Or the mite, 2 mites, 2 copper coins, 2 small copper coins. And selfishness and greed have always been obstacles to spiritual growth. Now, we're blessed to live in prosperous times, but prosperity can lead to a lack of spiritual concern for others. Jesus pointed this widow out, okay? Jesus pointed this widow out because he saw something that other people didn't see, right? He pointed her out because she had reverence for God by sharing God's concern for others. That's in verse 42, Mark chapter 12, verse 42. She could have thrown that in the wishing well. You ever see people do that, throw money in a wishing well, make a wish, throw it in? Does that ever work? Depends on what you wish for, I guess. But she didn't do anything like that. She didn't take it down to somebody to read her palm or whatever. She actually just gave it into, and what this would be a pot that was there, throw it in, to help feed somebody who was poor. And that was her last 2 cents, her last 2 pennies, so to speak. So she was showing reverence. In other words, she and God was on the same page with this. And then she showed humility in her quiet offering. What were the Pharisees doing when they come up and threw money in there? Remember? They'd have somebody blow a trumpet. Look what so-and-so's doing. Hey, you remember the movie The Quiet Man? John Wayne movie? Remember he had that little pipsqueak of a guy? Not John Wayne, but the other guy, you know. The other guy had that little pipsqueak of a guy that'd come in and say, Lord Squire Danley is it Danley? Yeah, is about to speak. Everybody listen, you know. It's like, well, that's what the Pharisees, that's how prideful they were. And they'd show that, you know, when they were giving their offering. And she showed trust by turning everything over to God. So this widow's faith was demonstrated in the act of belief that God would somehow in some way provide for her needs. So, we have those 4 stories. What did God see? Stories showing the defeat of self-importance, self-assertion, pride, and selfishness. Would you agree with me on that? Those are things we got to defeat in our lives. I've seen the faith there before, but what really caught my attention this time are these things that faith was defeating. What does it mean? Here's what it means. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4, the last part. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Our faith. Faith. Biblical faith. Pure faith. Working faith. That's the cure for all the spiritual problems that we have in this world. That's what we need to get over them. Reverence, humility, concern for others, and selflessness. Those are the things that are shown in those 4 cases. They're all values whose quiet work Jesus sees. Beyond the faith, Jesus sees. And this is what Jesus will praise. I thank you so much for your time.